And tonight, former President Trump is campaigning in the nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., the event focusing on fighting anti-Semitism in America. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has an update.
On the heels of the one-year anniversary of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack on Israel, former President Trump is holding an event here just blocks away from the Capitol building at the Hyatt in D.C. Now, the event features multiple speakers, including Jewish leaders from all walks of life. Later tonight, Trump is a featured speaker at the Israeli-American Council's National Summit, which is America's largest pro-Israel conference of the year. That's expecting to draw about 4,000 people. Biden and Harris were invited to speak, but are not expected to attend. This comes days after a second apparent assassination attempt on Trump. The suspect in that made anti-Israel posts on social media. In 2019, Trump signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism. It enforces civil rights laws to protect Jewish Americans from discrimination and harassment. The Uncommitted movement said Thursday that it will not endorse a candidate. Now, this group sprung up earlier this year during the Democratic primaries. They're in opposition to the Biden administration's military aid to Israel during the war. Now, this could impact votes in key battleground states in Michigan, which has a large Palestinian population. Now, right across the street from us is the Teamsters Union headquarters, which, of course, did not endorse a candidate this year, a first since 1996. The head of the Teamsters Union spoke at the Republican National Convention this year, but not at the Democratic National Convention, which was an odd move, as the unions have been known to endorse Democratic presidential candidates. Now, Trump this weekend will be at a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And Vice President Harris will be joining Oprah Winfrey in the swing state of Michigan for a 2-hour discussion. The talk will be streamed online and is aimed at energizing Harris's core supporters as well as to sway undecided voters. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
The event is called Unite for America and is being held in Detroit on Thursday night. Michigan is a blue wall state that is considered crucial for Harris to win in November. 400 people are expected to be in the audience and thousands more watching online on platforms like YouTube and Twitch. The organizers say the event will highlight dozens of grassroots groups that are backing Harris. And after the news of the Teamsters Union not endorsing a presidential candidate this year, the Harris campaign was quick to tout a list of local Teamster councils who have officially endorsed Harris and Walz. Some other major unions have already endorsed Harris, such as the United Auto Workers Union and the AFL-CIO. The Teamsters head organization has a history of primarily endorsing Democrats. The last time they didn't make an endorsement was in 1996. And along with their announcement, Teamsters released data from a poll among their members that showed Trump is favored over Harris by a sizable 30 points. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And President Biden giving remarks today at the Economic Club of Washington, D.C., addressing the nation on the rate cut and its implications for the economy.
Yesterday was an important day for the country, in my view. 2.5 years after the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates, it announced that it would begin lowering interest rates. I think it's good news for consumers, and it means the cost of buying a home, a car, and so much more will be going down. And it's good news, in my view, for the overall economy, because lower borrowing costs will support economic growth. And it's an important signal
in his speech, the president
from the Federal Reserve to the nation that after repeated interest hikes to cool down inflation, inflation has come back down, and the Fed is switched to lowering rates to keep the country growing, economy growing.
In his speech, the president notes that the Federal Reserve's actions signal that inflation is cooled and that the economy is growing. He pointed out that inflation peaked at 9.1% and is now closer to 2%. He also notes a record 16 million jobs created during his term, more than any other presidency in one term. However, many of his critics do note, including former President Trump, that much of those jobs were bounce-back jobs from the COVID lockdowns. The president says this is a moment for businesses to feel more confident in investing, hiring, and expanding. It's also a time for individuals to feel greater confidence in buying a home, purchasing a car, starting a family, or launching a new business. And right now, we're happy to have Javier Palomarez, the founder and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Business Council, to discuss the significance of the Teamsters announcement to not endorse any presidential candidate and how the Fed's recent rate cut may benefit the Hispanic community. Javier Palomarez, thank you so much for joining.
How are you, Steve? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. Javier, the Teamsters Union, it's still a big story. They decided not to endorse any presidential candidate, breaking from decades of tradition where they actually would endorse the Democrat candidate, at least for the past 4 decades or so. How significant is this in your opinion, and what does it signal about, the union members, not necessarily the union heads, but the union members' preferences?
I think it is significant, and I don't think it's gotten enough coverage, so I'm glad you're covering it. But I think that, it speaks volumes to the fact that they haven't found what they're looking for in either of the candidates. Both campaigns, I think, are trying their best. It appears to me that they're kind of borrowing pages from each other's playbook and somewhat shadowing each other. But at the end of the day, what it says to me is that the Teamsters have not found a home. They somehow or another, neither of the campaigns is resonating to the point that they would take a position. The fact that they've historically been kind of Democrat of late and did not make that decision this time around, I think speaks volumes. I think there's some work to be done there in terms of the Harris campaign to make sure that the Teamsters, feel like they are under the umbrella.
Talk to us about one of the union. You're a businessman, obviously. The Teamsters, they oppose right-to-work laws. Where is the intersection of, I guess you would say, union and their values and American free enterprise?
I think there has to be a way that both the unions and what they stand for, which is necessary. There's got to be a balance between, the rights of the worker, and obviously the corporation has got a duty to do what it has to do and turn a profit at the end of the day. I think that there is yet a place for unions to add value, and I think corporations would do well to listen to what unions have to say. And I think what the unions find themselves in right now, like everybody else, is trying to transition to what comes next. How do we add value as an entity, as an apparatus, on a going forward basis? How do we redefine ourselves as a union that stands for the rights of people? And how do we continue to ensure that we're working collaboratively for the good of the American economy? That's the real question.
Javier, I also want to get your thoughts. You are the president and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Business Council. There was a big interest rate cut, obviously, that many people probably know about by now, 0.5%. With regard to that decrease, how is the Hispanic community, the business community, reacting to it? And I also want to get your response to something former President Trump said yesterday, that this could be an indicator of either the Fed playing politics, and if they're not playing politics, then it could be a bad sign for the economy, as they could be countering the net job loss in a looming recession.
Well, first of all, the rate cut was nothing but good news for all American small businesses and certainly Hispanic-owned businesses. Listen, Steve, we are still struggling with the after effects of COVID. We are still having supply chain issues on the small business end of the economy. We are still struggling with margins that are getting squeezed all over the place, increases in inflation, energy costs that are still a bit too high for us. I think that on a going forward basis, our community is looking for campaigns, and from both of these candidates, an articulation of what exactly is it that you're going to do for my community. I'm delighted to see that Vice President Harris has pivoted away from what was, previously under the Biden campaign, a Bidenomics argument, an argument that had to do way too much with immigration, and is now pivoting to the kitchen table issues, interest rates, the cost of health insurance, just getting your family moving in this economy, the cost of energy. These are all things that are impacting the American small business.
Javier Palomarez, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.